Tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 14th of May 2024. Truth and Reconciliation. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, in an exclusive interview with Hyde Park, stresses the importance of a functional Truth Reconciliation program in Sri Lanka.
A functional truth and reconciliation process is something we're all hopeful for. I hope that Sri Lankan leaders are looking for ways to make that possible.
Also assures U.S. commitment to Sri Lanka's debt restructuring.
We want to be part of that with investment, with targeted assistance, and with supporting the vision to carry out reform.
Cabinet decisions. Cabinet of Ministers grant approval to submit a draft bill for President Ranil Wickremesinghe's proposed Economic Transformation Bill to Parliament. Wheeling power. Sri Lanka to allow power wheeling exclusively for new renewable energy projects under the net metering method, says Power Minister. Target market. President Ranil Wickremesinghe says Sri Lanka should target the expected increase in population in the Asian and African regions to develop agro-industries as part of export revival.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබා ගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuwata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very warm welcome. You're joining us at Derana tonight, First at 9, bringing you the very latest on First at 9 with updates from across Sri Lanka and around the world. We take you straight to your top story, where an exclusive interview was recorded with the visiting U.S. Assistant Secretary of State to Sri Lanka. The U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, says it is important for Sri Lanka to have a functional Truth and Reconciliation program in place, and that it is expected from the leaders emerging from the upcoming elections to make it a reality. Joining at Hyde Park with me earlier today, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State commended the progress of the current debt restructuring progress made by the Sri Lankan government and expressed the United States' readiness to be a development partner and to provide financial advice in the process ahead. He also said USA encourages Sri Lanka to continue to strengthen bilateral relations and that Sri Lanka must provide equal opportunity for external parties to invest in the island in order to maintain healthy competition. Let's talk about what you've discussed so far and what you intend to talk to our authorities.
We are so enthusiastic about progress that we can see in Sri Lanka on its economy and stabilizing its currency and the inflation here. We know that people are suffering, but we also can see rays of hope, and we are hoping that that economic progress continues to move forward. We want to be part of that with investment, with targeted assistance, and with supporting the vision to carry out reform. We also would hope that the support by the IMF is able to continue, and that will be based on whether Sri Lanka can continue this really challenging road to reform.
And the US has continuously requested Sri Lanka to ensure that debt treatment be fair and transparent. What have you got to say about the progress so far?
It's not done yet. There's important negotiations going on between the OCC, and we have said, and the Paris Club has said, that debt restructuring needs to be comparable for all creditors. So far, we see a tremendous commitment by the Sri Lankan authorities to do just that.
What will the U.S. priorities be for the island, especially as a development partner?
The biggest thing that we can do as a foreign partner is to support Sri Lanka's journey with the IMF, with the World Bank, with the Asian Development Bank, to make sure that Sri Lankans have access to good economic advice, but also eventually good credit that will help them develop their country. Now that we're into a different phase, we are really quite focused on helping to grow the economy. We have recently announced a $553 million investment in the Port of Colombo West Container Terminal. It's definitely true that there are many big powers all around the world who are competing for influence in the Indian Ocean and particularly in Sri Lanka. One of the things I like to say is the United States is such a great partner because we are far away. We have no territorial claims on countries in the Indian Ocean. We just very much want countries in this part of the world to continue to exercise sovereignty over their territory, but also their territorial waters.
The United States has continued to interfere in internal matters of the nation.
Let me say very clearly, we're not overthrowing any governments. What we are doing is that we continue to value democratic, free and fair elections and peaceful elections. The Sri Lankan people deeply believe in democracy and are tired of the economic problems this country has faced. And so I believe any leader, whoever emerges as the next president, whether it's President Wickremesinghe or one of the opposition leaders, will listen to the people of Sri Lanka and continue down the path of reform. Once all of the external creditors have a deal in place, it will reopen the possibility of Sri Lanka to get loans again from the international community. We'll once again be able to invest in this economy. That's when you're going to see a really important shift in the well-being of Sri Lankan people. We want Sri Lanka to have good relations with all of its neighbors and partners, and that includes China. We want China to be a good partner for Sri Lanka, to offer loans and projects that are reasonable according to international standards, that are not corrupt, and that address the needs of the Sri Lankan people. If Sri Lanka allows the United States, Europe, Japan, Australia, India to compete on an even footing here, China and other partners will be reasonable partners as well. But where we don't compete, where only China is allowed to invest and to act, we do see problems.
In order to reach political stability, Sri Lanka also looks to support from external parties.
Word about devolution of power. It is so important that this legacy of the Civil War have some positive effects on the future of this country. The commitment by the President to hand over 27,000 acres of land to hill country Tamil families, that's an important step forward. I do think a functional truth and reconciliation process is something we're all hopeful for. I hope that Sri Lankan leaders are looking for ways to make that possible.
ජීවිතේ හැම තැනකදීම ස්මාර්ට් වෙන්න පොලිය විතරක් ගෙවාගෙන යන්න CDB Smart Draft.
Taking you to our next headline-making story, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says Sri Lanka's agricultural sector must transform into an export-oriented industry in line with the rest of the economy. The head of state, while addressing an event in Atharugiriya, also highlighted that a modernized agricultural sector will be a key factor in eliminating poverty from rural Sri Lanka.
The new academic and administrative complex of the National Institute of Plantation Management in Atharugiriya was inaugurated under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Today, we are in the process of gradually rebuilding the economy. The agricultural sector has been instrumental in this process. Because of the downturn in the European economy, our apparel sector lost export opportunities. During that time, the agricultural sector played a key role in stabilizing the economy. Now, our greatest challenge is developing the economy. To that end, we have decided to transform the economy into an export-oriented one. The legislation required for the purpose was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers yesterday. We must modernize the agricultural sector in order to transform it into an export-oriented industry. Transforming the plantation industry is an important step in that process. What we need now is not plantation but agro-industries. First, we have to introduce new technology and proper managerial practices for this sector. After that, we must introduce these innovations into rural areas of the country. Agriculture is the key to eliminating poverty in the rural areas of the country, and for that we require a modern agricultural sector and agro-industries. Agriculture has to become one of the main sectors of our export portfolio. The population of Africa and Asia will increase by at least 1 billion people by 2040 or 2048. This population will require food that will be our new market.
In developments from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, a discussion was held between independent MPs of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, including parliamentarian Nimal Lanka and Minister Nimal Siripalda Silva's faction of Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Parliamentarian Anura Kumara Yapa revealed an alliance will be formed next month, targeting the upcoming presidential election.
Parliamentarian Nimal Lanka and independent MPs of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva's faction of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party held talks at a hotel in Talawatugoda today. Former President Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga also joined the discussion.
Sri Lanka Nidahas Pakshe Sandhanak hadana.
You all know that Sri Lanka Freedom Party is creating an alliance. We always reminded you of that. Today we held our first discussion with independent MPs and other groups from other parties. We are planning to hold discussions with every political party in the future. If we want to take this country forward, we should forget our differences and come together for the sake of our country. I think all parties agreed to this decision, but some leaders do not agree with this decision. We have not decided on our candidate yet, because now is not the time. However, we'd like to very clearly say that the SLFE will take the lead in creating the next presidential candidate. We still haven't thought about it. We are still bringing everyone together.
බඩු මිල අඩු කරන්න යන්නේ. බඩු මිල අඩු කරන්න බෑනේ මේ මන්ත්‍රීවරුත් එක්ක කතා. ඇයි අම්මෝ නැතු මන්ත්‍රීවරු නැතු කොහොමද බඩු මිල අඩු කරන්නේ? ජනාධිපතිතුමත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා කොහොමද ඒක පොඩක් පයිද අපේ පස්සේ තීන්දුව ගන්න. ලබන
Next month we are expecting to display our new alliance at a massive rally at Hambantota.
සන්දානයක් අපි නිර්මාණය කරන්න. එතකොට මේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතාත් එක්ක ගමන යන්නද හදන්නේ? මැතිවරණයකට දින දීම.
Dates and candidates should be named for the next election. For now, we will keep that matter aside and focus on gathering like-minded people who share the same political ideology and expect to create a motive force. After that, all the candidates will have to speak with us.
The Cabinet of Ministers during this week's meeting has granted its approval to present the draft Economic Transformation Bill to Parliament for approval. Accordingly, the bill is expected to establish an economic commission, investment zones and an international trade office in the country. With that, here's a look at some more decisions taken by the Cabinet during this week's meeting.
During yesterday's meeting of the Cabinet of Ministers, approval was granted for the initial draft of the Economic Transformation Bill submitted by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to be published in the Government Gazette and to be forwarded to Parliament for its concurrence. Accordingly, the legal draftsmen have been directed to present the formal draft bill, including the revisions suggested by the Attorney General. Cabinet also granted approval for the proposal submitted by the Presidents to institutionalise results-based management in the public sector. The ministerial result framework, outlining the goals for the 10 ministries with the highest budget allocations, was also granted approval. Cabinet approval was also granted to the proposal presented by the President to implement a voluntary retirement scheme for the employees of the Sri Lanka Savings Bank, which was completely absorbed by the National Savings Bank in 2019. Accordingly, a payment will be made to the employees of the Sri Lanka Savings Bank who retire voluntarily. In another decision, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the Minister of Education to commence GCE advanced level classes immediately after the completion of the GCE ordinary level examination. This decision was taken in view of the students' deviation from school education during the time taken for the results of the ordinary level examination to be released. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the joint proposal presented by the President and the Minister of Education to appoint 1,000 officers of the Sri Lanka Education Administration Service, Sri Lanka Teacher Educators Service and the Sri Lanka Principal Service as commissioned officers in the National Cadet Corps. Accordingly, 1,000 officers belonging to grades 1, 2 and 3 of the services will be appointed as commissioned officers after a basic training course. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the President to introduce the Technology Promotion Act by cancelling the Information and Communication Technology Act No. 27 of 2003. Cabinet approval has already been granted to the concept paper introducing new laws for digital transformation, which has proposed to establish a Technology Innovation Council as well as a Digital Transformation Agency.
India has extended the ban imposed on the LTTE for 5 more years. The ban was extended for fostering a separatist tendency among the masses and enhancing the support base for it in the country, particularly in Tamil Nadu. The Union Home Ministry of India imposed the ban invoking the subsection 1 and 3 of section 3 of the Unlawful Activities Preventing Act of 1967. In a notification, the Home Minister said the central government is of the opinion that the LTTE is still indulging in activities which are prejudicial to the integrity and security of the country. Welcome back. We take you City to Business News. The Ministry of Power and Energy has decided to allow power wheeling, enabling consumers to utilize an existing electricity supply from other locations using the existing grid. The power wheeling facility is an approach that allows the collective use of the power grid, consisting of power transmission and distribution systems, to deliver power to a location where such power is needed. Posting on X, Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijayasekara, stated that power wheeling for new renewable energy projects is allowed in the country under the net metering method. Meanwhile, the minister claims that the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka will determine wheeling charges and act as the regulatory authority in that regard. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the Minister of Power and Energy based on the recommendations of the committee tasked to implement the facility exclusively for new renewable energy projects. Taking you to the Colombo Stock Exchange, the Bourse closed in red today as a result of price losses with an average daily turnover of 3.3 billion rupees. The benchmark all-share price index settled at 2,358.80, up 1.12%, while the S&P SL20 settled at 3,671.23, up 1.39%. High net worth and institutional investor participation were noted in John Q's Holdings, Piramal Glass and Sampath Bank. Mixed interest was observed in Sunshine Holdings, Brown's Investment and Royal Ceramics. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to market turnover, whilst the sector index lost 1.57%. The banking sector was the second highest contributor to market turnover, whilst the sector index decreased by 1.56%. Let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded today, with the exchange rates coming up next. The Export Development Board, together with the People's Bank, entered into a partnership with the aim of supporting export industries. With that, here's a look at more corporate news in brief.
The Export Development Board has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the People's Bank to help the local export sector. This alliance aims to bolster the development of small and medium-scale enterprises and integrate them into the global export market, aligning with the local government's broader economic objectives. In the meantime, the Sadaharita Group announced the expansion of its global operations by exporting agarwood-based products to the United Arab Emirates. Sadaharita Group says it has set new standards by granting cash benefits to its investors and doubling anticipated returns. In other corporate news, Nations Trust Bank reported a strong performance in the first 3 months of this year, posting a profit before tax of 7.5 billion rupees, up 28% year-on-year, and a profit after tax of 3.7 billion rupees, up 35% year-on-year. Nations Trust Bank's Chief Executive Officer Hemantha Gunatilaka said the strong first quarter was recorded as a result of the sound capital base, robust risk management models and continued focus on digital empowerment.
Welcome back. Health trade unions have revealed plans to launch an island-wide strike action commencing from the 22nd of this month if government fails to provide solutions to their issues. Meanwhile, patients who visited state hospitals in the Sabaragamu province were severely inconvenienced as a result of the ongoing strike action.
The Health Trade Union Alliance engaged in a token strike action at state hospitals across the Sabaragamu province today, demanding an equivalent allowance of the DAT, also known as the Disturbance, Availability and Transport Allowance, provided to state doctors. The protesters say the strike was launched due to the lack of positive responses received from the government to their demands. Accordingly, the medical officers withdrew from duties for 4 hours from 8 a.m. to 12 noon today. The patients were seen facing severe inconveniences as a result.
We expect to continue this trade union action in other provinces if our demands are not met in the coming days. We have also decided to launch a nationwide trade union action from the 22nd of this month. Hospital services are not hindered at all due to the ongoing strikes action, as a very few health officials have joined this strike. Also, strike actions were effective for only 4 hours.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa, meanwhile, says amendments to the Telecommunications Act poses a threat to the country's media freedom. Addressing Parliament today, the opposition leader said the new amendments to the Telecommunications Act will be challenged before court.
සභානායකතුමා ඔබතුමා ටේබල් කරා ශ්‍රී ලංකා විදුලි සංදේශ සංශෝධන පනත. ඒ වගේම මේ කෙටුම් පනතේ නිදහස් මාධ්‍යයකට අහිත කර යෝජනා රැසක් තිබෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ වන්දියක් ගෙවලා තමන්ගේ මාධ්‍ය බලපත්‍රය ලබා ගැනීම. ඒ වගේම කොමිෂන් සභාව තීන්දුව කරන ආකාරයට මහජන යහපත ගැන තමන්ම අර්ථකථනයක් කරලා බලපත්‍ර හොසි කරන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් මේකේ යෝජනා වෙලා තිබෙනවා. මේ වගන්ති පිළිබඳව අපේ දැඩි අප්‍රසාදය සහ විරෝධතාවය මේ අවස්ථාවේ පළ කරනවා. ඒ වගේම අපි මේක අධිකරණයේ අභියෝගයට ලක් කරන්නට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
මේක හරහා ඊටාම භයානක තත්ත්වයක් නිර්මාණය වෙනවා. මාධ්‍ය පාලනය කිරීම පුද්ගලයන් කීප දෙනෙක්ගේ අතරට යන විශේෂයෙන්ම මාධ්‍යයට ලබා දෙන මේ ලයිසන් එක පාලනය කිරීම හරහා ඇත්තටම ඔබතුමාට කියන්න ඕනේ ඉතින් මම දන්න දේවල් හරිද සමහර වෙලාවට ඕවට කප්පම් ගෙවන්න ඕනනේ හරිද එතකොට මේ කප්පම් ගන්න ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි වෙනවා මේ වගේ බලයක් දුන්නා
මම මේක TRC ගේ අවධානයට යොමු කරන්නම් ඔබතුමා මතු කරපු වගන්තිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් සහ අපි මරික්කා මැතිතුමා කියපු කාරණේ සම්බන්ධයෙන්.
Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. I'm Indira Yamuatha. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.